And I also see a lot of negative campaigning, not with all the parties, but I think what voters, if I could read into the voters' minds, they want to see positive messages. They want to see, what are you going to do? How are you going to better address the issues we see between Canada and the United States, or the local issues? I don't want to hear what other guys did wrong. I want to hear what you are going to do, what you have done. If you already been in government, show me what you've done. Show me why you should earn my vote.
The countdown to Election Day is ticking by, and the party leaders are crisscrossing Canada, shoring up support for their parties and local candidates as the 45th general election enters week 2. Over the course of the federal campaign, we'll be speaking with municipal leaders from coast to coast to coast. What do municipalities want to see addressed in this pivotal election? That's exactly what we're here to discover on Municipal Affairs Canada Votes 2025. From housing to infrastructure, from bail reform to resource development, and from agriculture to social services, municipalities across Canada are tackling a wide range of challenges. But they can't do it alone. They need a strong and reliable partner at the federal level to help build stronger, more resilient communities. And today we're kicking off our local riding spotlight series, and we are starting in British Columbia in the riding of Courtenay, Alberni. The riding boundaries include the regional district of Alberni-Clayoquot, parts of the regional Comox Valley Regional District, parts of Courtenay, Cumberland, electoral areas E, F, G, and H of the Nanaimo Regional District, Lanceville, Parksville, parts of Nanaimo, and the Nanoose Indian Reserve. The last federal election saw Gord Johns with the NDP securing the seat with 44.2% of the vote. The Conservatives came in second with 32% of the vote. Then the Liberals with 13.4%. The Green Party walked away with 5.2%. The People's Party came in fifth with 5%, and rounding out the parties in the last election, the Marxist-Leninists came in last with 0.2% of the vote. Now, incumbent Gord Johns is back on the ballot looking to secure re-election. And to discuss the wants and the needs of this riding and parts of this area, we are pleased to be joined by Councillor Sean Woods of Parksville, British Columbia. So without further ado, let's go. Across Canada, our cities, towns, villages, and rural communities are alive with stories waiting to be told. Stories of innovation and economic development, resilience in the face of the housing challenges, and the financial hurdles municipalities overcome every day. At the Cross Border Network, we bring these stories to life. From coast to coast to coast, we're connecting Canadians to the issues shaping our communities and showcasing the people working tirelessly to make them thrive. With your support, we can expand our reach, amplify more voices, and shine a light on the challenges and triumphs of municipal life. For as little as $3.99 a month, you can help us grow and continue sharing the stories that matter most. Join us today and be part of this important mission. Together, we can tell more stories, build stronger communities, and make a real difference. Support the Cross Border Network now. Visit www.crossborderinterviews.ca today. Councillor, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about Canada Votes 2025 as Canadians are heading to the polls on April 28th to elect a new government. 343, new members of parliament from coast to coast to coast. I want to dive into some of the local issues that are important to municipal governments across Canada, and I wanted to start with you as you are on the complete West Coast, and we're going to start heading eastwards. So, as a councillor for the great community of Parksville, British Columbia, what are you hoping to hear from party leaders, local candidates, as this campaign enters its second week of the 45th general election?
Sure. So I guess we'll start with a local scale, Chris. Obviously, at local government, you've heard all of this before, but for your listeners, property taxes are a regressive way of paying for things, and a new municipal growth framework from the federal government to help municipalities across the country would be a huge help to a lot of the costs that we see at the municipal level. So that's what we want to hear from our local candidates, and it's also what we want to hear from the federal candidates as well.
Are you hearing that? Because you have a loud voice. You're a counselor, so when you speak, people listen. Are you hearing that? Have you had the chance to chat with any of your local MPs, the MP candidates, sorry, since the election has kicked off to talk to them about that new fiscal framework that not only you, but FCM has been calling for?
Sure. Well, here in Courtney, Alberni, which is our federal riding, I ran here 6 years ago, and I lost to a guy named Gord Johns, who's our incumbent MP. He really, I try to be as nonpartisan as possible. I find that works best. I'm not a big party politics guy. I think it's often a negative, an overall net negative on our system. But Gord works his butt off, and he knows local issues, he knows federal issues. The other candidates that are running, our federal Liberal candidate possibly is a parachute candidate. We're not sure where he lives yet. I don't know the person. We have a name. And so it sure seems like the Liberal Party of Canada has kind of put a check mark beside a name and didn't really get someone with profile. So I think it was a big opportunity missed probably for the Liberal Party of Canada. And then, of course, the Conservatives have a candidate, the Green Party has a candidate, and those are kind of the main parties with federal leaders. Um, I think it takes a lot of experience to get your feet under you politically to know what issues are municipal, what issues are provincial, what issues are federal. And I think it's important for those candidates to understand the importance of their work. And it's really tough to do when you drop into a federal candidacy with very little experience. And I know that because I had very little experience when I became a federal candidate. So, then I ran local government, and obviously I've been learning ever since. And so that's really what I look for is experience and knowledge that the job is going to take here locally.
Now, traditionally, and I'm going to sort of disparage my media friends in other outlets, but traditionally we focus on the broader national picture during federal elections. We don't, the local news focuses on the local races, but in my travels, in my conversations, only in the first week of doing this series, I'm getting a sense that there's a very big apathetic nature when it comes to truly Canadian issues because of what's going on with the Canadian US trade conflict, with the Canadian China trade conflict. Are you getting a sense that people are, and I know it's still early days, so you may be able to check me a little bit, but are you getting a sense that there is an apathy of what is actually the issues that are important to Canadians rather than the issues that are important to Canada as a whole?
Yeah, obviously, it's almost an existential crisis for Canada when you have our neighbor and our friend, a longtime friend, talking about annexation or 51st state or calling our prime minister governor. That changes the conversation significantly. I think there's one federal party in particular that should address that more than they are, and they're kind of stuck on previous issues. Um, and so it's very important for those federal parties to address what could be an existential issue for Canada. Um, and that is what's going to be on voters' minds when they go to the polls. It's going to be the question in people's minds on April 28th.
Is that what you're hearing from your local residents in Parksville? I'm assuming when you're chatting to them, because we I've had you on the show and we've talked about the misunderstanding of jurisdictional lines as you talk about the candidates, but I would say there's a broader context of Canadians misunderstanding the roles that each level of government plays. When you talk to them, do you get a sense that they are sole focused on what's going on down in the south and they're not worrying about fiscal frameworks, they're not worried about healthcare, they're not worried about, which is I know a provincial and a federal federal issue, but it is something that is often talked about. They're not worried about what's going on with climate change, and they're more worried about what's literally happening with Donald Trump and what he's going to do in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and 30 minutes from now.
Yeah. Uh, well, Chris, as with anything, you have to prioritize. And so when there's a bunch of issues in front of us, voters have to prioritize. Are we going to be talking about a pool expansion when we're talking to our MP, or are we talking about, tariff trade deficits that are going to have huge impacts in the hundreds of thousands of jobs if you're Premier Ford in Ontario, and those are all going to have ripple effects across Canada. And so, that's going to change our interprovincial trade barriers. Those are going to be removed. There's going to be wide sweeping effects, and so these, you know, when you see travel plans and flights drop significantly, when you see vacation home sales skyrocketing in, say, Arizona and Florida, Canadians are changing where they're spending their money, how they're spending their money. Um, and if you follow the dollars, I think that really indicates where Canadians' minds are.
You talk about the thing that you're hoping that the party leaders will address, and that is that new fiscal framework and working with municipalities. But there are local issues that are very important to the people of Alberni, if I'm pronouncing that right, and I think I am. Um, what are the true local issues that you're hearing about? And let's take away the municipal realm right now. What are the issues that the local candidates are addressing locally in the first week before Donald Trump sort of forced himself into this election?
Sure, if we go back a couple of months before our neighbor and our best friend really have kind of changed their mind back and forth, it's cost of living, it's healthcare, it's public safety, it's homelessness. Carbon tax was part of the conversation as well. A lot of people have a hard time understanding why, say, their gas or natural gas bill has to go up. But they all take a back seat, it seems now, to what is possibly the existential crisis of tariffs and the trade war. You know,
We are so you know the area quite better than I do, but I would be hard pressed to say that probably the leaders have not stopped in or have ever stopped in Parksville during a federal election. How do you get Parksville issues on the national stage? Is it just through those conversations, those advocacy work through your MP candidates, or is there something that you're doing, that FCM's doing, that your council is doing to ensure that the issues in Parksville get heard on the national stage or even get heard in Ottawa on April 29th after this election is said and done?
sure. Um, well, Chris, even though we are way out here on the wet coast, we do have party leaders stop by here. Elizabeth May has stopped by here. Andrew Scheer, Pierre Poilievre. I
So
believe
they have
Justin
actually
Trudeau might
come to
have made a quick
Parksville.
stop. Yes, yes, and you can probably thank, the national campaign directors who make sure that maybe every riding gets a stop, and if they can't make it up, then the other candidates pop down to a riding. But we are on the stop list often. Pierre Poilievre was just in Nanaimo yesterday. I'm not sure if he made it up. I don't think he made it up here yet for since the campaign has started. But we do see leader stops. We really depend on our MP to bring our issues to Ottawa. And so whoever is going to win on April 28th, we depend on that MP to bring our issues to the House of Commons. Our incumbent has done that. And if someone else wins on April 28th, we're going to expect that as well. Chris, you go across the country and with your show, and I really thank you for it. And often out here in the West, Daniel Smith, Premier Smith might be the loudest about this, but Premier Eby has been talking about this as well, that when you're way out here out West, it seems like a lot of the power is in Quebec and Ontario because that's where a lot of the voters are and a lot of the GDP. So it's understandable. Um, but our MPs try to do their best to bring our issues to Ottawa, and that's what we need, just because of kind of how the country was built and because of the population and the GDP that is in Quebec and Ontario.
So this is the first election under the new boundaries with 343 ridings across Canada. The previous MP was Gordon Johns. He's not an MP right now because at the time of the writs being issued, and I got to make sure I get that right because it is the right way to say it. He no longer is the member of parliament. What do you want your relationship, and I say you as Councillor Sean Woods, your relationship to be like with the next member of parliament, whether that be a re-elected Gord Johns, whether that be a Conservative, whether that be a Green, whether that be the named candidate of the Liberals. What are you hoping from a municipal MP perspective to have that relationship like as of April 29th?
Sure. So, Chris, what I found, and I mentioned this earlier, that I try to be as nonpartisan as possible. I try to build relationships with whoever the elected representatives are and the candidates as well before they are elected. I've found that if I can build trust and a relationship with them, then conversations are easier to have. You can text them, call them, go out for a coffee with them. And I have found that that is the best way to move any issues that I need to advocate for my, in my councillor role or my regional district director role. That's the way to bring those issues to that MP. And whoever wins on April 28th here in Parksville, in Courtney, Alberni, I'm going to be doing the same thing with that person, whether it's Gord or whether it's one of the other candidates. Yeah.
Have the candidates started reaching out to sit down with you? Because I know this is the time when they're outdoor knocking, but traditionally, and I've ran federally as well, I tried to reach out as many of the councillors because they're the ones who know what's actually happening on the ground. And the MP is often in Ottawa, and there's a high chance that they're not knowing exactly the intricacies of each of the individual municipalities. Have you had conversations, or are you open to conversations during this campaign from any of the party candidates, even and I got to make sure I get this name of the party right, the Animal Protection Party, if I'm not mistaken, if the name
Yeah.
is right there?
Yes. Yes. The APP. I have chatted, of course, with Gord. I've chatted with the Conservative candidate. I've chatted with the Green Party candidate, but I haven't chatted with the Liberal Party of Canada candidate. We don't have any information on him, but I'm definitely open to having conversations, coffee. I try to reach out their way first because they're busy. I know what it's like to be a federal candidate, and it is a whirlwind. I believe people would usually reach out to the mayor first before a councillor. I think that has happened with our mayor here in Parksville. But I try to reach out their way, and if they have time, then we'll go for a coffee or chat on the phone or at least text back and forth a little bit with any concerns. So I'm always open to whatever party it is, including the Animal Protection Party candidate. I will definitely chat with that person as well.
Um,
You did
we
your
are
homework, Chris. You did your
I
homework on that one.
I certainly did. I know there, as of recording this, there's six candidates. There's still a few days for the People's Party of Canada to get on the ballot, but as of right now, there's only six, and the People's Party is not one of them. So that's my weird knowledge of the Courtney Alberni riding right now. Um, we are entering the second week of the campaign, and you've talked about some very local issues that are important. We talk about new fiscal framework for municipalities. We talk about infrastructure. We talk about housing affordability. We talk about houselessness. What should the people of Courtney Alberni be asking their candidates as they approach their doors and start knocking on their doors to help municipalities address municipal issues? Is there a question? Is there a thing that they should be thinking about when they're casting that vote on April 28th or in the advance votes?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for all the voters. Everyone out there is going to have, different concerns and different priorities. And like I mentioned earlier, Chris, I think what's going to be on a lot of people's minds is, Canada-US relations. I think there'll be a lot of questions to the candidate who is knocking at their door about, say what their leader is going to do about those issues. And I also see a lot of negative campaigning, not with all the parties, but I think what voters, if I could read into the voters' minds, they want to see positive messages. They want to see, what are you going to do? How are you going to better address the issues we see between Canada and the United States, or the local issues? I don't want to hear what other guys did wrong. I want to hear what you are going to do, what you have done. If you already been in government, show me what you've done. Show me why you should earn my vote. And I think that should be the framing of the candidate at the person's door. Opposition is very easy. It's very easy to point fingers and say what should have been done better, but bring solutions and not not more problems to the voter's door. And I think you have a better chance of winning their vote on April 28th.
Going to ask a very pointed question, but are you optimistic that that can be done in this election? Because it seems to be a dogfight out there, and it seems like we are not even into the major part of this campaign, which is the last 2 weeks of the campaign, or even the last week of the campaign. Are you optimistic that we can keep it civil and keep it positive during this campaign, or are you expecting a all-out knuckle fight in this campaign?
It will be nasty. I try, Chris, from my perspective, I try to keep things as positive as possible. If you go through my feeds, the stuff I post, it's very easy to be negative. It's very easy to find the problems. What's difficult is to keep it respectful and keep it positive. That's what I try to do in my roles. And I think not all the parties, some parties are better at being positive than others. If your messaging was a lot of parroting what we hear from, say, Donald Trump, it's going to be hard for you to pivot to a more positive message. And, looking back, it might not have been wise to do that. And so hopefully communications teams and planning teams can pivot to a more positive message, because I think that's what Canadians are going to look for when they go to the polls on April 28th.
What's the one thing we haven't talked about that you want people to think about before entering that ballot box on April 28th?
Oh, I wouldn't want to put anything in people's minds, just because everyone's in a different financial situation in their lives. Some people are having a very hard time just making ends meet with their rent, or groceries, or a single mom with 3 kids. And then some people are worried about their financial interests, their pensions. There's just so many issues out there that I wouldn't want to put my viewpoint onto those voters. What I would ask is that people are just very straightforward and respectful in all their communications and their posts on social media. Ask your candidate tough questions. Ask your candidate to be respectful. Let's take it to a new level of discourse where we can disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that is the best way forward for Canadians.
Councillor Woods, thank you so much for sitting down with me and chatting about this. I know it was quick, but I appreciate the time that you give me every time that we chat, and because I always learn something from you. So thank you so much. And just remind everyone, get out and vote. This is an important election. This is a very important election. This is the future of our country. Vote for the Conservatives, vote for the Liberals, vote for the Greens, vote for the NDP, vote for the Alberta Protection Party, vote for whoever you believe is the best person to represent you. But at the end of the day, just get out and vote. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs Canada Votes 2025. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights into the world of municipal politics and how the federal government and this election is impacting local governments. Now, if you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms, or by visiting us on YouTube, or if you're watching this right now, subscribe today. Now, to learn more about the communities and the people that we feature on this show and our sister shows, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. Now, your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be back with a brand new episode of Municipal Affairs Canada Votes 2025 tomorrow. Till then.